Good afternoon. Who here is heading to the Oculus social event in 20 minutes? Oh, a few people, okay. Thanks for coming. My name is Jim Marggraff. I'm CEO and founder of Eyefluence, and at Eyefluence we transform intent into action through your eyes. So I'd like to speak about what that means, the technology, a little bit of history, the implications, show you a demo, and hopefully answer some questions. Thanks. So to begin with, a little just history. Turns out there's a fellow who was a neurologist who back in the late 90s sat down with a person with quadriplegia who couldn't speak. He was locked in. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. And so this fellow, Dr. Torch, in the late 90s, created first the blink detection mechanism the man could wear, and then evolved that into 7 generations of wearable eye tracking technology. And this is from 98 going forward. And along the way, he worked with the DoD, he worked with Willow Garage, with the Mayo Clinic. He developed a pair of glasses that were put on Stephen Hawking multiple times as well. And I happened to meet him a few years later. My background is in starting companies related to using new technologies that can be applied to affect the way we interact with humans and the way we interact with machines. So my background is in telecom, but then I created something called a LeapPad. Does anyone here know who Leapfrog is by chance? Okay, thank you. So I created the LeapPad. Before that, I did an interactive sphere with a processor and a stylus on the bottom and created an interactive, what was a talking globe, and took that technology forward. And eventually, my last company was founding LiveScribe. So I made a smart pen that captures notes and captures audio. So I like looking for technologies where you can take that technology, push the limits on how we can interact with different modes of input and output, and come up with models of interaction. So I've had that experience. So when I met Dr. Torch back in 2012, I studied this company called ICOM. It was based in Reno, Nevada for half a year. Studied their technology, their patents. I traveled around the world, met with other eye tracking companies, and came to the conclusion they had some spectacular eye tracking technology. So what we decided to do was start a new company. So I merged this in and I founded Eyefluence in 2013. And the intent was I looked at basically eye tracking. And who here has had any experience with eye tracking technology? Okay, only a handful of people. Who knows how eye tracking technology works? Okay, great, that helps a lot. So here's what happens. If you're going to track one's eyes, you have to look at the eyes and discern how the eyes are moving. And this has been done for a couple decades. More recently, it's been done with wearables, but up until now, it's been pretty much done with remote tracking. What you'll do is you'll shine a light at someone's eyes, infrared light, like Kinect, and you'll then shine a camera, you'll focus a camera on one's face, identify the eyes, then look for features in the eyes that you can monitor. So if you think about your eyes, you've got a lot to work with. You've got a pupil, you've got your iris, you've got your white sclera, and you can look at the eyes itself. So once you do that, you then track the eyes, and what you end up with is a position for each eye, an XY set of coordinates. And that XY values, if you take 2 of them together, and each one of them you look through the eye and you create a model, you create 2 axes, you look where they intersect. Now you have distance, you have Z. It's a very powerful technique. So when you begin to look at this, then you say, okay, what do you do with this eye tracking? Once I have it, how do I use it? And up until recently, the way that it was used was largely for market research, for helping people with disabilities, because they could look at a location and dwell and wait for letters to be typed as they looked at a letter at a time on a remote keyboard. But I looked at this and I said, instead of just being an eye tracking company, I'd like to solve a different problem, a broader problem. I'd like to transform intent into action using your eyes. And so we began looking at different headsets. And started looking, this was about the time Glass came out, and we were looking at Epson, Vario, and other AR headsets and early VR headsets, and said, gee, I think if we look at the method of input for these, you can use your head, move it around, you can use your hands, you can use your voice, but you have your eyes that are incredibly high bandwidth input channel, but how do you then use them if you'd like to control something? So I said, first of all, I think HMDs without the eyes are just fundamentally incomplete. You need to have some way to use your eyes to interact, not just monitor where people are looking, although that's powerful too. So, but this only makes sense if you say, what do you do with this? So now we look at it and say, gee, what if, I say they're incomplete if you could do certain things, such as being able to let someone navigate, be able to let somebody activate applications, identify who they are, maybe pan, zoom, scroll, interact with gaming mechanics in different ways, study what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what their intent is. That begins to get powerful because now we start understanding a different level of a human's intent and their feelings, their emotions. and that gives us a lot of power. So let's look at how that plays out. First of all, on the technology side, just quick thoughts here. First, when you're doing eye tracking, you have to solve some problems. If it's AR or VR, let's start with AR. If you're outside, you're dealing with a lot of light, you typically throw light at someone's eyes, and as you may know, with Kinect, it doesn't work very well outdoors because you've got a lot of light that's being colliding with infrared light. So we said we have to solve this problem, what's called robustness. Okay, that means we're looking at how bright, we got to separate the two infrared noise, the signal from the noise. Okay, then we can look at the user as well. We can say, gee, now we have to deal with user robustness, because if I've got an imager, a camera, that's looking at someone's eye, I need to be able also to distinguish when the eye is blocked by droopy eyelids, called ptosis, or mascara, or in general, eyelashes. So that's a challenge you have to overcome. Next thing you have to do is look at the amount of power it's consumed, because we're all sensitive to power. Even VR headsets, as we look ahead towards cutting the cord to make these mobile, and of course mobile VR is very sensitive to power. So we have power challenges with illumination, with cameras, with optics. Also, we have challenges with just processing. And finally, we have to look at the industrial design and where we put all this, the sensor, the illumination, and so forth. On top of all of this is the user experience, because if we design this and we end up with this, again, great way to be able to give just X, Y, up until now, people hadn't found really good ways to use this. So this is a picture, by the way, of what we did. We collapsed our hardware to something very small. And you can see this. This is what's called a flexible circuit that can be bent and wrapped around. And when you do so, it's smaller than your pinky nail. And this is our eye tracking hardware that we can then mount in devices. So we can mount this in AR headsets, we can mount this, or different versions of this in VR headsets as well. So we've come up with ways to be able to be very flexible to support different industrial designs for different types of headsets. And this one has a number of LEDs, some light-emitting diodes that throw off some infrared light. We're moving now to be able to get that down to a single LED. So that's coming. So now let's shift to a different part of this concept, which is what we call the eye-brain connection. Because as I've said before, you have a challenge here, and here's the challenge. When I began reading about what you might do with your eyes back in 2012 and 13, the literature said, a lot of good papers said, if you're thinking about using your eyes for controlling things, don't. Because you have a fundamental collision. A human being's using their eyes to collect information, consume information, but if you want to simultaneously let them have actual control, this is going to be a collision. So they said there's a problem, you have this collision. And all that were available as methods of using your eyes in interesting ways were two basic methods. They were using dwell and using blinking or winking. Now, you've seen games, some people here may have designed some games where you can use your eyes and point lasers and either augment or in some cases replace buttons on a controller, which is interesting. You can do some of that. We don't believe that's the best use of eyes. We think there's some interesting approaches. We think there's a lot more that can happen, and I'll show you some of that and speak to it as well. So this issue as well of dwell, the problem here is what it means is, imagine I've got a screen up with a set of icons and I look at one and I want to launch it. Well, if I have to sit there and wait for it to launch, it's not going to be very fast, and it's going to be very dissatisfying as well as fatiguing. So we said, as a benchmark, we'd like to be able to let someone interact in such a way that if you were using your finger on a phone, we could let you use your eyes to interact with the display faster than you could do anything with your finger on a phone. So that means launching applications, navigating, scrolling, panning, zooming, etc. Be able to do that just with your eyes, but faster. Realizing, of course, that's just the precursor to then making this multimodal. So now we use your eyes with your hands, with your head, with your voice when it's appropriate. But that was the starting point. So we started to look at this eye-brain connection. And we looked at, first of all, the eye. We studied the eye. We looked at the way light flows through the eye. Looked at the way light flows through the eye to your retina, through your foveal area, to the occipital region of your brain. Looked at the timing of this, how the rods and cones are stimulated. Basically, had a great team, a number of PhDs, and worked with them on a user interaction model that we thought could be different. And what we came up with were a number of laws as we began developing experiments and demos. And the prime directive above all of these laws were one simple principle. We said, let your eyes do what your eyes do. And all of these different terms, each of these has pages of writing on it that explain it. They're somewhat cryptic, but they're quite interesting because they guide the way we think about what we're doing. So that takes us then to this idea of an interaction model. So interaction model, what does that mean? We go way back with computers. First we had punch cards, then we had a keyboard. And with keyboard, we had an interface. That interface was text. Then we had a mouse come along. Now we have a GUI. That was a new interaction model. Okay, we moved from that interaction model forward, and pretty soon we had tapping on glass. It started with tapping, then double tapping, then pretty soon a flick and a swipe and a pinch and a spread. And now we have all types of interaction gestures that comprise that interaction model. So what would it mean to have an interaction model with your eyes? And that's where things get interesting. So let me see if I can break out of this and do some switching here. Okay. So what I have right now is a screen, and I'm going to this is going to pixelate dreadfully, but I'm going to enlarge this screen quite a bit, and I'll explain what this is. And I'm using the accessibility mode on a Mac to make this larger. There we go. Okay. Good, hopefully that shows. So that image right now is the image that I have being wirelessly sent from a pair of AR glasses. This happens to be an ODG R6. If anyone's familiar with this is augmented reality from a company in San Francisco called ODG. That stands for Osterhout Design Group, and it's a really nice AR headset that has some remarkable capabilities. It'll be coming, there's a version on the market now. Sells for $2,500 or so, but it's being used for some really interesting applications. So I'm going to switch, and I'm going to put that on. Okay, so the first thing you'll see is now I'm wearing it, and this has some cameras that are looking at my eyes. It's illuminating my eyes. I'm sorry you can't really see me here. It's sunglasses. But if you can watch me a little bit, I don't know from there if you can see it all, but I'm moving my eyes right now back and forth between the red cross and the blue eye. And I'm just moving back and forth. And as I do, I'm getting visual feedback that's indicating to me a selection box. Okay? Now I'm going to just move around counterclockwise, item by item. We'll just move around. And if you'd like, could someone tell me an item you'd like me to look at?
Shopping cart.
Okay, the shopping cart. Ah, we're going to come back to that. Shopping cart, something else. The clouds, the weather. There's an airplane for travel. There's a photo album. There's an icon for EMR for medical records. Here's a view of my eye, a grid, some settings. This is called gaze casting, a checklist. By the way, there's a little lag. For me, this is instant. As I look, it's there. This one's texting, and this is some shopping. So let's take a look at things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this demo. You're going to be able to see what I'm seeing, and I'm just going to proceed without explaining all the things that are going on. I'll come back to that and give you some further explanation. But just watch what I can do. Now, the key thing here is, as I'm doing this, I'm not dwelling, I'm not waiting, I'm not winking, I'm just looking. And that's the interaction language that we've created. This is the same interaction language and interaction model we have for VR. And we're taking it further there in the form of different modes of interaction for gameplay as well as emotional understanding. So let's start out, and let's take the airplane, and let me launch it. Okay, so there's a flight from Reno to Hawaii. And again, I'm not waiting, I'm not winking. Now let's go home again. And next to it was some weather information. So we find out it's nice 81 in Maui. I'll go home again. And I'm not using my hands, by the way. This is just no speech. It's just my eyes. In the upper right corner, there's a photo album. So let's launch that, and we'll find out we've got some photos here that I can look at. So I can move around and look at these. These are thumbnails. In the upper left corner is really a favorite of mine. That's my wife on the right side. When we had a small team a couple of years ago, we took our team to Hawaii. And when we closed our Series A, and over there, the next photo, we went on a hike in a bamboo forest, which was cool. And over here, there's a picture of an eye, which I can zoom into. And this, we have every employee's eye is on the wall, and we have a puzzle under it to try to decipher who it is. If I want to go forward, this is an interesting one too, because here I've got now 3 of our employees, and I'm going to pull down a menu, and I'm going to launch recognition software, and now I can look at them. There's Ben, there's Steve, there's Zoe. I just move around, and I get information on them with my eyes as soon as I want it. When I want to, I leave this app, and I'm back home. Another example, if I want to control something, now I'm a doctor, and I want to be hands-free. I've got patients coming in, and there's Eric on the right, and I want to check out his charts. Well, there's protocols, insurance, confidential information. Here's current conditions. So why is he here? Let's check it. Well, he tells us, or we know on his records, I can read 511. Notice when I'm reading, what's happening? Nothing. Because I don't want feedback. I don't want a reticle moving around with my eye. That will be hugely annoying. So instead, I just read. Pain in his foot, swelling, bruising. Down here, he had an x-ray, so let's zoom into the x-ray. Okay, so he had a bad break. Let's go back 2 screens. And over here is confidential information. And now Now what it does, it takes a picture of my eye, because my iris, is a better identifier than my fingerprint. So basically what we have is something we call CBID, for continuous biometric identification, because we can monitor one's identity continuously at whatever rate we choose. So now I find out, yeah, he had a substance abuse problem. Okay, so I know something about him. Let's try another one. This is a checklist, and what I'm showing you is the variability in the type of interaction model we've created. So now, instead of carrying a clipboard with a magic marker and a glove on an oil rig, which is, by the way, the state of the art in collecting information for procedural adherence, right now what I do is I say, check fire extinguishers, okay, tell me what it is. Verify they're accessible. Okay, I'll mark it done, I'll go on to the next one. Next one says check for leaks. Verified lines appear as shown. Well, there's that picture. Let me zoom into the picture. Got it. Okay, I'll go back, I'll mark it done, I'll go on to the next one. Okay, this one, record the pump pressure. Well, I've got to put some numbers in. So I'm going to bring up a simple keypad, and I'll just start entering the numbers 1 through 5 as rapidly as I can. I can delete them if I want to. Someone else wants to give me some numbers to enter? Okay. There we go, 420. Okay, we'll mark that one done, and we'll keep it. We'll log it, and I'll leave the app. Okay, another one, a couple more, and then we'll step out. This is an interesting one because this is texting, and here's a dialogue between me and my co-founder, Dave. So he says, I say, hey, how are you doing? He says, great. Is the demo working? I say, almost. He says, send me an iMessage when you can. And I go, sure. So at that point, right now, he got that message on his phone, wherever he is. That's actually live, and we're connected to the net, and it was sent. What I did is I put another one in just beforehand. Who knows John Oak? John, I guess, he's the president of SVVR. So I pulled up his picture. Carl gave me some help before. And I said, let's send John a message. So I'm going to do that. John, I'm here on stage live giving a demo at SVVR, and let's see if this is transcribed and sent to you. So there it is. It says, you're on stage live giving a demo at SVVR, and let's see if this, he's going to get this bizarre message from me wondering, who is this guy? Okay, I'll stop. I won't send him anymore. But we went back to the shopping cart because another thing we said is, in a virtual world, or of course in a real world, I want to communicate, I want to take action. And that action may be, by the way, who here has read Ready Player One? Okay, more people. So I just finished, which was great because we're not in the Oasis yet, but I think we're heading there. So in this case, I'll pull something up, and I've grabbed a real physical world prop. So let's go into our shopping cart app. And oops, hang on, I've got a hint of what I'm going to do. I had this running ahead of time. There we go. I've turned a camera on now. Okay, so there's a live camera. Sorry, you guys, pretty bad contrast, but I'll see if I can see these chocolates right here. Okay, there we go. That's not bad. So I'm going to look at the chocolates and take a picture of them with my eyes. That image then is sent to the net, and we hand it to a matching service for the image. We also were focusing on what I was looking at. So we sent it information. I was looking right at the label. Hopefully it finds it, which it did. It found it, it handed it back to us. We gave it to Amazon. Amazon gave us this image. We loaded that in, and now there's some for our collection. What I can do now is I can buy it. We put John's picture on here. So I'm going to put John in here. We got his address, and we'll order it. And now he's not only going to get, he's going to be stalked. Strange guy. And by the way, that was a live order placed. That was a real live order placed on Amazon in real time. So he will get that delivered on Saturday, April 30th. Okay. One other one I'll show you is something we call gaze casting. And what this means is now I've turned my camera on. I know this light is really rough here, but I've turned the camera on, and there it is. So now what you see is not only where my head is looking, but you see where I'm looking as well. So you can see I'm looking at folks in the audience. This fellow here, can you raise your hand? There we go. Awesome. And right here, oops, sorry, fellow right here. Okay, and so forth. Now it gets interesting because I could be using this in interesting ways in the real world. I'm going to go back to my menu, and we'll go to a helicopter. So this happens to be a still image, but I could be on a helicopter as an EMT, and I'm looking at this man's chest. The surgeon back at headquarters is saying, wait a second, or at the hospital is saying, don't look there, and he feeds his gaze to me and says, look down here at the contusion on his leg. So there's lots that can happen when we begin sharing gaze casting, particularly in the social environment, particularly as we start to look at avatars and social interaction and communication. Things get really, really interesting. Okay? So let me take these off. going to switch back out of this. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening here. All right. So I talked about this interaction model, and you can see this is a remarkably flexible power interaction model. By the way, when we put a person in a headset and give them access to this, we put them in a tutorial. The amount of time it takes them to go through that tutorial and learn to do what I'm doing is less than 2 minutes, and they're doing everything that I was doing as fast as I was doing it in less than 2 minutes. So it's we're very, very excited about the implications of that as well. It needs to be easy to learn. So let's look at this. Let's see. Oh, different one. Yeah, let's start here. So I asked before, so who knows what foveated rendering is? Okay, a few more people. So for those that don't, let's start with something simple. If you'd hold up your right hand, or one hand, and put your thumb out in front of you. Okay, and now cover one of your eyes with your other hand. And now look at something on the screen, or look at me, and hold your thumb up, and block out whatever it is you're looking at. That thumb is occluding roughly 2 degrees of your field of view. It's about 2 degrees. That area in the back of your eye is where you have a high density of cones, and that's called your fovea. And what's amazing is you see the world by looking around and taking little snapshots as your eye moves from point to point, blending them all together in your brain so that you have an image of what you think comprises a scene that you're looking at. The reality is, all you actually have are high-resolution 2-degree images with less resolution as you go out to about 10 degrees, and then really poor resolution beyond that. But your brain thinks, wow, I can see the whole scene with high resolution. That's not what's happening. So think about what that means clearly in a VR space. Well, if we're looking now at reducing processing and simplifying and reducing power, imagine now a VR headset that, of course, is looking at your actual gaze point and can now render only where you're actually looking in real time, which means you have to do tracking very rapidly at the proper sampling rate, you have to have low latency, a number of things have to play into this, but suddenly we have a tool that's going to move us because this will be part of all future VR headsets. It's just a matter of time because it means you'll be able to cut back on all that processing and clip the cord. So what I like to say here is, in terms of foveated rendering, let's do a little experiment. So you've seen what I told you right now. Take a look. You see where it says look here on the slide? Go ahead and if you would, hold your thumb up and tell me roughly where that 2-degree coverage is. Clearly it covers the rock. How much does it cover in the image from where you are in the middle of the audience? The fellow who raised his hand before. Is it pretty much the rock, or does it cover over to the promontory? How big is your 2-degree spot? A little bigger than the rock? Okay, now watch. You think your brain is seeing equal distance. Go ahead now and fix your eye right on that spot on that rock. Fix it. Don't move it around at all. Okay, now, maybe with my mouse. Can you see this? Yeah. Over here, don't move your eye. Don't move your eye. Keep it right on that rock. I'm moving my mouse over here. Can you tell there's motion over there? Okay, you can see that because your brain is wired to notice things in your peripheral view. It's a survival instinct. But right where that thing is moving, can you tell what color the house is above where my mouse is moving while you're looking at the rock? No. Can you tell there's a house there? Probably not. If there was text there, you wouldn't be able to know it. But if you look around there, look over, and then come back, you'll think you know exactly what's there. So there's an amazing trick your brain is playing on you as you develop a model of an understanding of the world. The reason I'm going into this detail is if you're anyone here, who here are designers or developers? Okay. When you begin to understand this, you'll realize the power of knowing where someone's gaze is that goes way beyond what people are doing with gaze today. Today, it's pretty much point at a spot and shoot. But when you know where someone can't see, as well as where they can see, as a designer, you can do pretty wild things. You can play tricks, you can create mastery in ways that have never been done before. You can involve cognition, I'll come to that. So really cool things happen. Now watch what happens. Keep your eye on that rock. Ready? Keep looking at it. That's what your brain sees, approximately. But you don't know that when it's happening. And in fact, it's worse than that because we haven't modified the area out here isn't that much color because as you move outside in your peripheral region, the rods and cones are much more less sensitive to color as well. So it's actually more black and white there too. Again, from a design perspective, this tool gives you a lot of power. Okay, let's go on to another point. The next word I put up was cognition. Because another thing that's fascinating is your eyes happen to be the fastest moving organ in your body. They move up to 900 degrees per second. Okay, what that means is, as one begins to track somebody's eye movement and notices where they're looking, because your eyes move literally around in tens of milliseconds, you can understand what someone has seen and what they might have perceived, which means you understand what they might know about a situation. Have they seen a certain clue? Have they not seen that clue? Have they seen it in their peripheral region? You know they haven't seen it if it's very detailed. Have they looked at it? How long have they looked at it? So clearly that information is powerful once you start to get creative and look at it. Furthermore, it's possible now to allow them to move so rapidly that they can move between points in an image and begin to collect information very quickly, which means you can hold it in what's called your short-term memory, which then leads into something which is called your working memory. So I like this example. Say, if you would, 2394651. 2394651. Okay, you're probably looping that in your head in what's called a phonological loop, and you're hoping you're going to remember it. 2349651, if I got it right. So now you're keeping that in your mind, but if I say to you, add the first, third, and fifth number, divide by the second, and add the seventh, that's a little harder. And that's a problem because you can't. On the other hand, if you have a scratch pad of that information, which is why we write numbers down, suddenly now you've got a means to be able to look at that. Now, if we give you an environment where we can present information and let you interact with that information as fast as you can look using the tools I showed you before, as fast as you can move it, cut it, paste it, we've given you tools that have never existed in enhancing human intelligence, which gets really exciting again when you start to look at layers of interaction in gaming that go beyond quick twitch. Because now there's a level of cognition that can be designed into the game that can take advantage of this ability. It's very powerful. Let's look at another one, empathy. Clearly, people have seen some of the demos that are popping out now. When you look at the brain and cognition, but here we have the fact that we know we're wired to look at people's eyes. And in fact, if you look at someone with severe autism, even modest autism, you'll see that their gaze pattern does not move to individuals' eyes. They look all around the body, but they don't dwell in the eyes. So we know what the connection with the eyes are. So the possibility now of being in an environment where you see an alien, and you're not sure if he's friend or foe, and you gaze at the alien, and he looks up at you, and you can tell he's looking right at you. Not only that, he's close in VR, which amplifies the emotion. So now you're looking at him, and he looks away. You're not sure, uh-oh, what's happening? Then he looks over at his buddy who's next to him. He looks at him, his buddy looks back, and now they both look at you, and they're staring right at your face. And you feel that, and they're moving towards you. Suddenly, we know we know the impact of emotion, and we're seeing some of the early games coming out. I happen to use fear in this case, but it doesn't need to be fear as well. It can be empathy in a way that lifts the emotional connection to a whole new level. For instance, you're dancing with someone and looking in their eyes, which will happen soon. So we can look at what happens with empathy, with eye interaction. We also can look at how the eyes dilate. We know that eyes dilate when there's emotional reaction. They also happen to dilate when lights turn bright and when you're cognitively loaded. If I ask you a hard math problem, your eyes will dilate. It's predictable. It's amazing. So the last one I wanted to mention is artificial intelligence. Okay, here, there's a company called Rival Theory. In fact, the CEO is here today. Is he still here? Yeah, there he is, right here. This is Bill Klein, and Rival Theory has developed sentient characters with AI that have memory and keep track of emotions and behave autonomously, which opens the potential to do some amazing things with interactive participatory storytelling and basically human to human or human to avatar, human to not NPC, but actual characters that become connected to you. So we see some amazing potential here as well. Are we good? Okay, you ready? Yeah. Okay. So actually, we got something here. I'll talk for a minute and answer questions. I need a volunteer. I can't see people here. Let's see. Hold on a second. Over there. You want to come up? So we've got. We'll see if we're going to be able to make this fly. There's some software here that's VR headset. So we've got eye tracking built in this. And what I wanted to do here was just demonstrate what happens when you look at head tracking versus eye tracking and see how somebody that's never experienced this before does, and you can watch them and cheer them on. So we'll see if this works. We've not ever done this live on a stage, so I'm not sure. We'll give it a shot, though. Last thing is this notion for me, which is huge, the idea of an intelligent AI agent in an eye interactive dialogue and what that means. So we can think about this in the context of storytelling. We can think about this in the context of all games and avatars. So we've got NPCs, we've got human-to-human connection, we've got human-to-AI connection. And now with this extra ability to understand where you're looking and how you're feeling and watch your gaze pattern as well, there's an entirely new level that we believe will be spawned for games. Because any character-based game today, the characters look out. Their only feedback that they know that gives that character a sense, if they're procedural and they actually would take advantage of that, is the ability to know via something you do, like you fire at them, to turn towards the source of the firing. But the moment your eyes are there, there's another dimension. There's another level of interaction that can occur, because you can be firing over here, but you can be glancing, and they're aware that you're aware of them. And once that begins to occur, sentience among the characters, as well as the ability to invoke emotion, and to respond to your emotion as a function of how you're behaving, we've gone to another level. And we believe that all games in the future will endorse this, and it'll be as primitive. Games that don't have that will look like vector graphics from Atari back 30 years ago. We think this will be the future. So that's where we're going. So here's what's happening. He's got eye tracking going on. He's in an arcade, and the first part is that he has to whack the moles, if you will, with his eyes, with his head. So he has to do this with head tracking alone, which is what most of the headsets have today. So let's see how he does. Go for it. So the first thing he's going to do is look down and put a coin in the slot. Good job. No training. Okay, now he has to whack these things. He's pretty good. He's had practice at this point. You watch him up here. See him? Can you see his head here? See he's bopping up and down. Okay. I don't know about his nausea, but... Okay, now he's going to put another coin in, switch to his eyes. So now it's just using his eyes. So you can hold his head completely still or move it if he wants, doesn't matter. He just said this is awesome, by the way. As I said, this is very simple use, very, very primitive use of eyes, but nevertheless, it's interesting. Yes? Sorry? Can't hear you. What did you miss? Did you miss a couple? Yeah. The visual cues draw your attention to it, but yeah, if anybody tries it, this is... Okay, look to your left. Up. Look all the way to your left. Yeah, look down a little bit. So his eyes were 0.4 seconds on average, and his head was 0.59, roughly 0.6 seconds. So he's about 2/3 the time with his eyes versus his head. Okay. I think he's going to keep going. We'll pull him away though. What's your name? Thank you. Good job. Sammy. Thanks, Sammy. Okay, we can pull the plug in. All right. Okay. So I think our enthusiasm for what the world holds when we can transform intent into action through your eyes is unbounded. We're a company with about 25 people right now. By the way, we're looking for Unity programmers, if anybody's interested. We're based in Milpitas, and we're Series A, Series B funded, and we're rocking and rolling. We're having a good time at it. So thanks for everybody's attention today. Appreciate it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Right. So what's happening is as I said, we looked at the biomechanics of the eye, and what we've created is an interaction model that consists of affordances, signals, and feedback. Okay, and what we have is a mixture of purposeful and non-purposeful eye motions that we're looking at and combining. We're giving feedback at certain points, lack of feedback at other points, and that melds together to create the opportunity for you to look around, see things, respond, and have your eyes follow at times without you knowing that we're moving your eyes. So it's a combination of, as I said, purposeful and non-purposeful motions. And again, if you put the headset on, in 2 minutes you'd be doing everything that I was doing. Right, the AR headset here is an ODG headset. We have our tracking on multiple devices now, on many devices, AR and VR. This is one we can show publicly. We're prohibited from showing development progress on different devices at this point. This is one, though. But our model is to deploy our eye tracking, eye interaction, stack of technologies and software in headsets to enable people to be able to transform intent into action. So we're working with most of the major players. Yes? I'm sorry? So latency, there's a couple things contributing to latency. Right now, we're running this demo, interestingly, I was doing with my eyes. You might guess, it was running at 30 hertz. And I was able to, our interaction model will work with very, very low sampling rate. We can do things as well as we bump it up to 120, 240, 500. Latency is defined by a combination of course, your sampling rate and also by your processing time. Our processing time is measured in low tens to under 10 milliseconds for processing a frame, which means it's really low latency. So that gives us, for anybody that knows what that means, it's pretty powerful when it comes to both foveated rendering and being able to do some really additional interesting things. Yeah, it's interesting. When you look at the eye, what does it mean to focus? Focus, so let's split it in two parts, and I'll offer one more term and wrap up. There's a term that is a huge problem for the industry right now, and people close to this know. The term is called the vergence accommodation problem. And the problem is this. Right now, you're looking at me at a distance. And if you hold your hand up, you look at your hand. And if you move your hand closer, your eyes will cross. You take it down, you look at me, your eyes will diverge, and they'll be near parallel, okay? The challenge is right now, when you look at most of the headsets, anybody that's seen light field technology knows that one of the problems you have is there's a fixed focal distance for the image that you're looking at. In any of the VR headsets, any of them, they're putting that image in a plane. However, what they're doing with two eyes is now adjusting the position of each of the images to make your brain think, like on a movie screen, that you've got 3 dimensions. Well, the fact is, those two images are sliding together or sliding apart, but they're both sitting at that same focal plane. And if you want to feel the difference, if you're game, if you hold that same thumb up again, and you look at your thumb, and you look at your thumb first, pull it in close, and then you look above the thumb at me, you'll understand what I mean. Just try it. Pull your thumb up. Get your thumb pretty close where you can see it. Look at your thumb and focus on your thumb. Then put your thumb right below where my head is. And now look from your thumb to me and feel your eye. And now go back to your thumb. What's happening with your eye right now? The focus is changing. How's the focus changing? The lens inside your eye is moving from being very flat to being elongated. Okay, what happens with the problem of accommodation, which is your lens changing, and vergence, which is your eyes moving in and out, is your brain says, hey, I'm looking at that 3-dimensional object. It's close to me. So your eyes cross. Well, when your eyes cross, they naturally will then, the lens will change shape. The problem is, the system has a focal plane that's out 8 feet away. So your lenses in your eyes have to do something different that your brain doesn't want them to do. That raises havoc. It'll give you headaches, it can give nausea, depending upon how severe it is and how old you are as well. So that can have an impact. So the issue you asked of how can we manage focus, there's ways we can look at changes in the eye, depending upon what parts of the eye we look at, that can give us information, and I'll leave it at that for now. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks very much, everybody.